You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
Yo, it's Tuesday, November 19th, the Tuesday edition of Leafs Morning Take. Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill. What's going on, Rosie?
The Tuesday edition. Yeah, we got a hot little pre-taped interview today I'm excited about. I was just watching Sports Center 2. Just had myself a little chuckle about the Bruins right now. Just a small chuckle, nothing crazy. Just nice to see other people struggling.
Honestly, I was thinking about that last night. I don't feel bad for the Bruins at all. Dude, how long have their fan base been giving it to Leafs Nation? And now full circle, I think we have to capitalize on this. I know people are scared because you don't want to wake the Boston Bruins up, but they're struggling. I think Jim Montgomery's job is on the line right now, and they got pelted by Columbus, although the Leafs did earlier this season as well.
Yeah, isn't it crazy? The Boo Birds were out, which is kind of funny to see. The TD Garden hasn't seen that very often in the last 15 years. And Montgomery, how far do you got to go back before he's like just this god with this historic NHL season? It's like a year and change ago, and now he's like jobs on the line. It's just crazy how fast things can change in this league.
Let me ask you, as a former player, how much do you think of a soap opera that whole Swayman thing was in training camp in that room?
Yeah, they asked him about it. I think you're trying to find reasons on why it's not going well right now, and you're going to go back a month and a half and say, "Oh, because you missed this little block of time, is that why the whole team's in shambles?" Like, get serious. If they came right out of the gate that way, okay, you could have that conversation, but this is November 20th, and I just don't think that has anything to do with it. The media loves to try to piece together something, and usually the players are like, what the hell do you think that had? You know how much has happened since then? I don't buy that narrative at all.
Well, the only reason why I asked that, because I watched the Boston Bruins Maple Leaf series last spring, and Jeremy Swayman stood on his head. The Leafs couldn't solve him, making every stop, and now he's letting everything in. Him specifically signing the contract, there has to be the pressure, dude. He's been awful this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just the way she goes. And, you could say I don't know. It's funny when guys sign a big ticket and then it's like, are they going to shut it down, or do they only play good on contract years, or is the pressure now off and you can be free to play? I just think they're playing poorly in front of him. He's playing poorly. It's just a calamity of errors out there, and they're playing 500 hockey, getting booed off their ice. Their coaches job is being talked about being on the line. It's got a lot more to do than Jeremy Swayman signing that contract in early October.
And that's the precedence we said in this day and age of coaching changes. You don't do well for like a 15-game stretch off with that coach in with the new guy. And you're so right on Jim Montgomery. They're just like a year and a half removed from the most historic regular season in NHL history. Let's boot this guy. I even saw a tweet as far as to say boot everybody from Neely to Sweeney. It just shows you the passion and the need and the urge and the want to win, right? I think we deal with that a lot in this market, but specifically in a market like Boston, where they enter every year, much like Toronto, I would say, where it's like Stanley Cup or bust, or at least has that feel. When they don't achieve that, heads are going to roll, man. That's just what happens.
Yeah, it's the way it is. Those markets, especially Boston's been used to winning for so long, and Toronto has not been used to winning for so long, but they have the expectations of winning, and they have this huge fan base and this big media core. And, you look at Edmonton right now too, having a hiccup right now as well. And, Craig Button this morning did a complete 180 on, like, I wish I was more vocal about it, but at the beginning of the year, everyone, including all the Vegas betting sites and everything, are like, oh, the favorites to win the cup are Edmonton Oilers. I'm like, why? Like, they had everything go right for them to get to the finals last year, and good for them. They have the best players in the world, but then they've lost players. You cannot expect Skinner to do that again. Their D played out of control playoff hockey. Everything went right, and they lost players. I'm like, why are they the favorite? They are, and not to mention that they're one of the most inconsistent hockey teams in the league. So now that it's falling apart and everyone's bailing on their prediction, I was just like, that was just kind of a silly prediction in the first place, when Florida Panthers are quietly still being the Florida Panthers.
Edmonton looks like a wounded animal. I sort of disagree with you. I would say now's the time to bet on Edmonton, but the price hasn't changed whatsoever. They're still at plus 800 to win the Stanley Cup. I think they're a really good team. I think they're going through some growing pains. I think the big question with Edmonton is the crease, like most teams. I would have zero faith in Stuart Skinner or Cal Pickett for that matter. And I just don't know if they go externally for a replacement option, but that's going to be the big concern, I think, entering the playoffs for that team, because I think they're so talented. They're going to figure things out. But defensively, you've been on this all season. They're an absolute train wreck, and we'll see where the Oilers go from here. A tough loss to them, to the Montreal Canadiens. They're playing the Ottawa Senators in the back-to-back tonight. I was also tuned in for the Ovechkin game in Utah. This guy just continues to score. Everything's fine and dandy. He's approaching Gretzky, and then he takes like a harmless knee last night.
I know he gets 2 again. Like he is
Yeah.
just watching he's scoring at a clip that's better than he was in his pick any year of his career, which is all the heyday, like his prime, his heyday, whatever you want to call it. He's scoring at a quicker clip than that. And he's like my age, man. His shot is, I was just watching it. I'm like, he's hitting both corners right at the elbow at will through traffic, all kinds of, it's just disgusting what he's doing. Now they're not even, something that wasn't even brought to anyone's attention for like the last 2 years is that not only will he break Gretzky's record, but can he do it in less games, which is just, I was like, that's even on the table from back in the 80s. It's incredible. And I don't know. I don't think anyone's got any hate towards Ovi. I mean, by all accounts, whether you're a fan of the Capitals or not, it's hard to hate on Ovi and what he's doing right now. I haven't heard anyone, no one's even like, oh, dumb Russian gonna break Gretzky's record. I haven't even heard that from some, moron. Everyone's just like, that's incredible. And it really, really is. And now he gets like, it looked like it was his knee pushed in a little bit. That would say MCL, the inside to me. He leaves, and then you usually come out and do a little twirl, and he's like, absolutely not. And he leaves. And it's just like, man, that Herculean type of player. He's just an absolute truck out there. And to think he's hurt now, that could really jeopardize this special thing that he's on. And I kind of hope he's all right and he keeps going at the clip he's going, because it's so bloody impressive.
It really put a damper on that night because, again, he almost got back-to-back hat tricks. This dude's like 39 years old. And then we see Tom Wilson step up to the plate. It was a harmless hit. It reminded me a lot of a couple years back in the playoffs where Corey Perry, who I think you're never going to give the benefit of the doubt to, had like the knee job, if you will, on John Tavares. And then the Leafs are like, we're going. Like, I forget who was it that ended up going him. Trying to remember who it was, folks in the chat, if you can help me out, who ended up going Corey Perry. Oh, it was Nick Foligno. I think it was Nick Foligno who's like, we're going regardless. It had that feel because watching the replay, I don't think McBain did much there, but Tom Wilson's going to Tom Wilson, and he stepped up to the plate, and so did McBain. He held his own in that scrap.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I remember Letang gave me a whack going up the ice, and I turned around and just put my stick kind of in between his thighs there going, what are you doing there, guy? And then he just dropped to the ice, like the most flagrant floppy thing in the world. I'm staying there going, are you kidding me? Then, Bill McCree rips me a new asshole saying this is minor league stuff. And I'm going, are you kidding, Letang? Like, that's the grossest, raddest thing I've ever seen in the world, you greasy little rat. And then Mike Rupp comes up and he's like, hey, Rosie, did you spear him? I said, spear him, Rupper. My stick was like vaguely between his legs, and he absolutely sold it. Like the biggest joke ever. He goes, yeah, I know what he does though, but we still got to go here. I'm like, okay, away we go. And it's just one of those things, like, I might not have been on purpose and it might not have been what it looked like, but for the sake of optics, we got to have a scrap here. It's kind of one of those funny old school things about hockey that some people don't get, but yeah, very much still alive in today's day and age, obviously.
Come to think of it, we got to get Rupper on the show. I think we did discuss that last time Mike Rupp was on this podcast. We'll get him on soon. But to some Leafs news, off the top from practice, Fraser Minton recalled. He's played 5 games with the Marlies so far, coming back from that high ankle sprain he suffered early in September in the prospects camp. 2 goals, 2 assists. David Kampf to IR, retroactive to November 16th. These guys are dropping like flies, but I think it's a win-win. Like, I think it made a lot of sense to begin with to call up Fraser Minton. I don't think it stunts his development. I don't think it hurts him. If he can't hack it at the NHL level, you send him right back down to the AHL. He's waiver exempt. Like, it made too much sense to give him a go here, especially with their concerns and needs up the middle right now, Rosie.
Oh yeah, give him a taste, man. He's been doing well there. It's all about stepping stones with a guy like that, where you're not sure. He's certainly showed flashes of ability to play in this league. Most memorably last year in camp, when he was just like an absolute standout, and had another big year in junior. Came to camp this year, couldn't stay healthy, got injured. Now, by all accounts, he's healthy, playing well in the American League. And we talked about will we see him in a Leafs jersey? It's like just wait, just wait. There's things that are gonna happen. Injuries will come. You don't need to rush it or shove him in there. It's gonna happen, and there's gonna be a little door that opens. Maybe it's a 2-3 game door, whatever. We'll see where it goes. And here we are with David Kampf down. It's funny, like our group chat was like, you think they should call up Minton? Would it be a good time for that? Ding, Leafs PR right after that. Minton recalled. Camp on IR, which I don't know where that came from. It seems like the Leafs, I don't know. Again, we don't follow all the other teams like this, but it seems like the Leafs just have these out of the blue announcements of these injuries that, I mean, most teams, like the guy gets a knee on knee, or he goes down funny into the boards and kind of he's milking it. Maybe he finishes the game, maybe he's not afterwards. Oh, he's going to be on IR for a week or two. It's like, oh, okay, makes sense. Leafs are just like, and out of left field, this guy's on IR and that guy's not going to skate all. It's crazy, but all the best for Minton to get this shot. I'm interested to see how he looks and if he can be effective. By all accounts, good player. We'll just see if his development is there to make an impact on this club right away.
Personally, I want to see where he's deployed. Obviously, it's going to be at the middle. We referenced it. Austin Matthews still not good to go, not even skating right now. Max Domi, no secret, he's banged up. David Kampf hurt now. There is this need for a boost up the middle, and not to put too much pressure on the kid, right? He's really, really young, and I think there's going to be some growing pains early on in his career, and we saw that even dating back to last year where he completely came out of nowhere to make the team, played 4 games, and then sent back to junior. But you're going to start him up the middle. I just wonder where in the lineup. I think behind John Tavares in the 3-hole, you would think, assuming Max Domi can go, right? That's the right fit right now.
I think so. It's just, with the injuries and Matthews out at center, I would like to see him get a real opportunity with some real minutes and to be able to play. I know it's tough to get him like top 6 and to play him too much, but he's that type of player. So you want to give him an opportunity to play with players and to be effective. I can't stand it. And especially the players, like skilled players can't stand it when they get called up to the National League and they're playing on the 4th line and they get 7-8 minutes. And it's like, and they're playing with me and they're like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? I'm a high-end goal scorer who needs to get a whole bunch of reps, a whole bunch of looks, got to get his feel and his timing down to make those plays. And they don't get any opportunity. So I hope a player like that, because there's going to be a spotlight on him, because everyone's going to judge him by the first game that he has out there, I hope he gets opportunity to play with decent players and play some decent minutes. And with these injuries, you'd think that would happen. I don't know who exactly that's going to be with, but like you said, there's opportunity up the middle for sure. So I don't think it's as much expectations are on him as it is just opportunity. And if it goes well or doesn't quite get well, I hope that people, I think just by looking at the kid, you can say, oh, let's remember he's quite young. He's still got a lot of hockey ahead of him. And, you look at that baby face and realize that he, is very young and this is his first kind of real opportunity. So judge him accordingly, but I hope he gets the opportunity to have success.
Yeah, I'm curious to see, again, how he's handled by Craig Berube, especially knowing his age, especially knowing the fact that he's got 4 career games in the NHL, 5 more in the AHL. Let's not forget this is the first year he's been eligible to go down to the AHL. So, like, seasoning is needed, you would think, but there's been plenty of players in the illustrious history of the NHL been able to make the jump really, really quick. And the other thing I would bring up, too, like, I mean, everybody in this market knows what this team is probably going to try to attack between now and the trade deadline. And I think Fraser Minton, his recall helps answer that question. Granted, we're sitting here November 19th, and there's a lot of racetrack ahead leading up to the trade deadline a couple months away. But I think it gives you a bit of a peek if you're management as to like, okay, can this kid hack it? Can he play up the middle right now? And I think it answers a lot of questions, actually sets them up pretty well for down the road as well.
And that's one of the good things, if there is any good things about running into
Yeah.
injury problems, which they're having right now on the Maple Leafs, is it gives you an opportunity to test the waters and to test your depth. And a guy like Fraser Minton, if everything was going well and everyone's healthy, you're not going to really know. And then, it could be post deadline when you get into trouble. And now it's like, I don't know if this guy's going, like how much this guy's going to be able to give us or how this is going to pan out. So the one shining thing about these injuries is you get a chance to test different guys out, see where they stand. How deep are we at center? Do we need to go shopping for a guy? Is this kid ready? By all accounts, he could come in and, just mentally not really there, maybe a step behind, maybe watching a little too much, maybe, hesitating a little bit, not following the simple plays, not finding the soft spots. On the other hand, he could go out there and he could just play free and let his skill reign and stick to the system that he knows that Berube's running and just keep it simple and work his absolute bag off and find a little bit of chemistry with a teammate or two. And all of a sudden the management's going, this kid, if we need him, could maybe help us this year, which is not something you want to shoulder him with. But if he's there and he's ready and you get an opportunity like he will this week, it's a good litmus test for him.
Mikey Decrepit writes in the chat, Alberga going hard on Movember with 3 mustaches on one face. You're welcome. You're welcome, Mikey. You got a big guest today, as you mentioned. Pro poker legend Daniel Negreanu. We caught up with him on Monday. It was a lot of fun, wasn't he?
Yeah, he is. He's got a new podcast, kind of a mental health type of podcast with his wife. So he's talking about that a little bit. But when you talk the Leafs with I mean, he could jump on this show any day. He obviously keeps up with it all the time. He knows all the narratives and what's going on behind the scenes. By all accounts, one of the guests we have on that definitely knows what he's talking about when it comes to the Leafs and pays attention. So it's good to have those guys. Looking forward to that interview dropping today.
Leafs Nation, we know you've got thoughts, takes, and opinions, and now's your chance to share them. Please hit that link in the show description or in the YouTube chat. I'm about to post that, by the way. Fill out our quick survey. Not only will you help us build the content you actually want to see, but you're also throwing your hat in the ring for a $250 Fanatics gift card. That's right. You can win a gift card and get a Jay Rosehill jersey out of it, a Jay Rosehill Maple Leafs jersey. Pretty damn cool. And guess what? We've got multiple ones to give away. It's a quick minute of your time that could score you something super sweet. Don't wait. This chance ends on November 19th. Imagine somebody won a Fanatics gift card and they're like, you know what? We're going to get a Jay Rosehill Leafs jersey. That'd be cool.
You'd have to go deep into the custom archives for that one. I don't even know if they'd allow it. Just do yourself a favor and get yourself a Matthew Nyes jersey instead.
Yeah, probably. I could picture Fanatics being like, you want a 38 Rosehill jersey? Like, we don't even make those. We don't even have the font for that.
That's not nice, Nicky.
Sorry.
I'm
I don't
sure
even
the
have my own
Fanatics
jersey.
can make you anything as obscure as that one would be.
I think it'd be a cool jersey. Get it signed as well, frame it, put it behind me. I already got a shrine behind me of you. Like I got you in Philadelphia there. Maybe put another picture beside it.
And I'm in the picture in the Jasper Pond hockey tournament behind you too. My goodness, I've made the wall twice.
Yeah.
You.
No, you're pretty much a staple of the show. I can't lie. Make sure to get those super chats in at the Leafs Nation 401. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. Leafs Morning Take wherever you find your podcast. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. That'd be fantastic. And don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com. So some practice notes. We sort of glanced over this yesterday as well. We're going to have that Marner conversation. Don't forget. I know a lot of people in the chat already going back and forth on what the Leafs should do with Mitch Marner. That is coming up. But Austin Matthews won't play tomorrow against Vegas. Craig Berube on Monday saying, well, I think it's a little bit of a holding pattern, but he's not getting worse. So that's a good thing. There's just something weird about this whole thing, Rosie.
Oh, there's something kind of he has lingering issues sometimes. Like his wrist is no good, right? Has he had surgery on that, but he's missed some significant time in his career over that. It's an upper body injury. It makes me think shoulder or wrist or neck, maybe. Neck would make sense. It's just how you're supposed to analyze when they don't give you anything. Like it's 92, and if you say he has a shoulder injury, everyone's going to be running him through the glass. Or if you say he's got a wrist injury, every single guy's going to be just chopping slashes down on his wrist. I mean, I kind of get it, but they're so the opposite of being transparent with these things that every time they give a tidbit of news, it's kind of a shocker because you have no idea what's going on. But by all accounts, his process of rehabilitation is not going well, no matter how you look at it. And they say he's being stagnant with his healing and it's just not getting better, which for a young guy like that with all the equipment and resources in the world to not be getting better after 3 weeks now, kind of a head scratcher. But they say they're not going backwards. So I'd almost rather they just had a little setback and maybe he tried to one time a puck and just kind of aggravated again and had to go back and shit, we just lost like 4 or 5 days. Let's kind of start back over. But they say it's not that. So that's almost more concerning. But again, we're completely in the dark with the Maple Leafs injury perspective. And it is frustrating. Again, probably for no one more than Austin Matthews, you would think.
Every situation's different, but yeah, you're so right. It does concern me. Like even when you try to compare it to like Calle Yarncroke, where everything looked good, and then boom, he's in New York seeing a specialist. Then boom, he's had surgery today. So
Crazy.
again, I've been saying this and echoing this for a couple weeks now. Just get the guy right. I think this team has proven time and time again. They can be fine. They can win games in the regular season without Austin Matthews. They could even do it in the playoffs. Obviously, you don't want to be missing the top player, one of the top players in the league in general. But get him right. If that means he's got to miss 20 to 30 games, I know it stinks. I want to see him on the ice, but so be it. I think the fortunate thing about this whole situation is the fact that we're sitting here in November. There are so many games. There's like 60 plus games remaining in the season, which I feel much better about. Like if this is happening and lingering around the trade deadline late in the season, I probably have a different tune right now.
Yeah, and if that's the case, why not just say it? Just be like, "Hey, this is something that's bugging him. He's not responding well to anything, and our MO is just to get him healthy." So, I mean, this could be a month-long process. It could be more. Maybe things change and it's less. But right now, we're just taking our absolute time. Don't expect to see Austin for a while, and everyone could talk about it for a day, and then it's just kind of, all right, now we know where it stands. But now it's like, is he in tonight? Is he in tonight? Is he in tonight for 3 weeks straight? It's like, why would they want that on their plate either? It's just a distraction, and I can just see the media, and they're just clamoring for more info. Just give them the truth, and that's it. But I'm not saying I'm not saying they're not being totally transparent about it. Maybe things are changing on the fly, and it's not responding as he wanted. But yeah, I mean, look at their power play when he got hurt. It was the talk of the league on how disgusting and abysmal it was. He leaves, and now they're second in the league in that time frame. It just is such a head scratcher, and they're 5-1, something without him. Like you say, and you keep kind of bringing that up when we talk about him. They're just fine without him, like
Yeah.
obviously. And I don't know why that is. It makes me kind of wonder. Okay, when he gets back, is it going to disrupt things? Is it like it'll be interesting to see? But obviously, putting Austin Matthews back in the lineup cannot do anything but good things. So it's just silly where our mind goes because of what we've seen in this market.
Speaking of which, Gary K writes in, maybe he's on a Rodman type vacation.
I see that, Anna. He's just been in
See
Vegas and
Matthews just peeling off to Vegas every second day and be like, I'll be back when I'm back.
I don't think he's got the same kind of issues that Rodman had in his heyday. I call them issues, maybe not. I don't know. I just think
I was gonna say,
different
you call those
personality.
issues. I think Dennis Rodman is a damn legend, dude.
I'm
He
not
would
saying he's
he'd win
not.
NBA.
He has some stuff going on upstairs though, but
Yeah.
that Austin Matthews doesn't have. I don't think that's
No, that's fair.
controversial.
Watching that Bulls documentary during the pandemic, I could not believe how many rebounds that guy pulled on a nightly basis, on and off the court. But like it was like when Michael Jordan's like, you know what, Dennis is being Dennis. You're like, what? But he
Yeah.
would just like rip away, go MIA during games, go back to the room. Nobody can find the guy, but he performed on the court, and Matthews performs on the ice. So
He was quite the personality. I just rewatched that recently too, and
so good.
you watch it again, and you're just like, how are people comparing LeBron? Like, how many times did he have to change around and change the pieces around him to get it right to finally win a championship? Jordan was just like, give me whoever, I'll make them better. And
Yeah.
it's not even close to comparable. LeBron's better with longevity. Michael's so much better than LeBron James. I'm sorry.
We need to get you a secondary podcast where you just talk the LeBron James podcast with
I
Jay
just
Rosehill.
I just bash LeBron the entire time, every show. That'd be fun.
He's
Be
a
easy to.
content creation monster, that family. We talked about it last week. Like Bronny's not playing road games. Like just talk about the precedence that sets. And if you're Bronny James, maybe just step up and be like, you know what? I want to be a normal human. I want to actually earn my spot to the NBA. But
Oh,
that's a whole baffling conversation in itself. Practice lines for Leafs practice on Tuesday. They got Monday off, by the way. McMahon, Tavares, Marner, Nyes, Domi, Nylander on line 2, Robertson, Minton, and Holmberg. Fuck. What comes to mind when you think of that line, man? Robertson, Minton, and Holmberg. Is that what we're doing? I guess they're really strapped depth-wise. Then you got Dewar, Lorenz, and Steves on line 4.
oh, the bottom six, man. Bottom six is not Stanley Cup
Can't get much
worthy.
worse, though, dude.
I know they're banged up, they're not healthy, but even if everyone, it's just the bottom six. Like every time a guy wins a team wins a Stanley Cup, you have those bottom six guys like step up drastically, and it's like it's a storyline. Like how hot was this guy, and how many big goals did this guy get us, and how about this line was just so reliable for us. I don't think the Leafs have that right now. They're in net and at D, and their big boys are all firing lots of positive things, but if you want to talk about going the distance, I think they have to shore up their bottom six, and that right there is a stark reminder of of how they're, as of right now, they're not deep enough there. And I'm not saying like maybe Nick Robertson just turns it on out of nowhere and we laugh about how we were talking about it. Maybe Minton is just a stud and away he goes. Maybe Holmberg turns into this, two-way player that does everything right and is very, very, very reliable and gets a little like maybe, but the from what we see now, the writing on the wall is that that's not the lines that are going to get it done for this team. So, fingers crossed, but I think depth is an issue at the bottom 6 level.
You think? I'm done having the Robertson conversation. All I
I
know,
know.
he is a hired gun. The calculator community tells me, and he's got one goal, I don't know, 17, 18 games at this point. It just becomes sickening. So start scoring some goals. We can start talking about him. The blue line pairings, not shocked. Hakanpää, I thought, was turbulent over the weekend. Looks like he's going to get another shot here. And Benoit is going to be on the outside looking in. Any other thoughts before we get to the Marner conversation?
Yeah, I'm just curious to see what they do with Hakanpää. Is it a deal? Is it something that he's going to need to play through, or are they gonna start mixing him and Benoit in and out interchangeably and saying, hey, whoever wants to take the lead on this, we'll keep you in, but we're gonna go with the hottest hand here because right now, again, 2 games in, I just wonder how much time they're going to give him to get his timing back and his speed back because he seems like he's quite a ways away right now. Unfortunately, hopefully that does change though.
He's got to play games, but I think Benoit has earned ice. He's
I
earned
think it's
opportunity. I know he's been trash well, not trash. He hasn't been as good as last year. I should rephrase, which I did. Last year, he burst onto the scene. That was a value signing. I like the extension, but I think a guy like Hakanpää hasn't earned anything. Like, especially
right.
knowing his resume the last couple years coming off an injury. So I would like to see Benoit back in there at some point here.
Well, that's kind of what I'm alluding to. Like,
Yeah.
how long are you going to keep Benoit? Because he's earned it, and I miss him in there. And if it was some guy that was kind of a throwaway dude, like by all means, give Hakanpää a big long runway to stretch his legs and figure out his game. But you just don't want Benoit up there kind of rotting away. Like, how long
Yeah.
are you going to give him? And is there going to be a point in time? Is it 4 games? Is it after this game 3 games? Is it 5? And then you start, if he doesn't really hit his stride, Hakanpää, then you start switch hitting those guys and still hoping that Hakanpää gets back into it. I don't know. But yeah, he hasn't looked fantastic. And I guess once you see that, you start to think, understandably so, he has not played a lot of hockey. But as an athlete and a guy that's been there, I think that after 5-6 games, you should start to know what you have with him, and he's a ways away right now. So hopefully, he shakes off the rust in a hurry.
Man, the problem is the schedule. Like, they have 4 games for the rest of November.
Month.
Like, they
Yeah.
have this one against Vegas. They're home to Utah on Sunday, at Florida, at Tampa, and then they get that. It's 2 game weeks back to back, and that's what you're going to get. So, like, that's the risk you run, even with the goaltending. I'm very curious. Like, it looks like Stolarz is going to get the call again against Vegas. That means, like, can you remember the last time Joseph Woll played? Like, we're getting to that point. Ditto for Benoit. So, like, I actually think it makes it tougher when you're not playing. But amidst all the injuries, it's actually like a silver lining in all this is like the lack of games, right? So there's like pros and cons of this whole thing.
Yeah, it just is what it is. You're going to go through, you know, groups or periods of time where that's the case, and you take time to rest, you take time to do some off ice stuff, you take time to practice, to heal, to work on some stuff. Whatever it is, what it is. You look at Tampa; they're 3 games behind us. Like, that's a week. How did they fall a week behind us in the
I
short
know.
amount of schedule they've had? It's just odd. So those teams are going to have to catch up there in the standings, and yeah, I mean, when we're injured and banged up like this, we can't be complaining that the schedule isn't heavy enough. It's probably a good thing, but yeah, when you're talking about some of the little details of who's playing and who's not, it starts to become, a bit aggravating when you want answers to certain people.
To the folks in the chat, yes, I'm well aware Joseph Woll played against the Washington Capitals, which again was a week ago. And
Seems
if he
like a
doesn't play
while.
this game against Vegas, then they play Sunday against Utah. That's like a week and a half without games. But I digress.
Proved your point, Nick. Good job.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into this Mitch Marner conversation. I'll start by giving you his stats. He's played 19 games, 6 goals, 24 points, on pace for 26 goals, 78 assists, 104 points. He has never hit the 100-point plateau in his NHL career. In 6 games since Austin Matthews went down, 4 goals, 6 assists, 10 points, plus 4, 6 power play points, 14 shots on goal, 28.6% shooting percentage. It's been the talk of the town the last couple days. We all knew it was coming, very similar to last November. It was all the Nylander chatter. extend Mitch Marner, Rosie, is my question to you.
Hmm. I think if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, why do you benefit from doing it right now? Like, what's the benefit here? We know he's kind of going to be about a 100-point player. He's been very close. He hasn't been a 100-point player, but 99 or 90, like he's right there. By all accounts, he's going to have his best year this year in his prime. He's on a contract year. He's taken a lot of heat in the summertime. He's going to have a big year. Like you say, he's on fire, and people are like, "Oh my God!" Well, if he continues to be on fire like he is, he'll end up with 104 points, right? That's a pace he's on. It's not earth-shattering thing. He's not putting up 150. It's what you kind of would expect for Mitch Marner, but everyone knows he's capable of doing that. It's not like people talk about this as if it's is Mitch Marner a good player conversation. Everyone agrees with that. Everyone agrees with that. It's, do you want to give him 13 or 14 million dollars and lock into the same group of players that you've had for 8 years that have done nothing? That's the question. So you're just going to say yep again after running it back and running it back and running it back. You're just going to say yep. He's not doing anything that we didn't expect. He's still the same guy. The question is he going to get us over the hump in the playoffs? You could rattle off a whole bunch of numbers of elimination games, deciding series games. He's bagels across the board, right? No one cares anymore if you get a 99 points or 104 points. It's awesome. It means you're a good player, but are you a great player that should demand $14 million? You have to do that shit in the playoffs. And that's the only, especially with the Toronto Maple Leafs, they're the only organization that has just floundered so bad after all these good seasons in the playoffs, come up short, ridiculously disgusting and sad and frustrated fan base. Okay, Mitch, you want $13 million. We might give it to you very, very well. But if you get us to the second and third round and you show up in the elimination games and you score those big goals and you play playoff hockey, I say you have no choice but to sign the guy. But just because he's hot in November, no, don't give him the bag, because it'll mean nothing if they get fucking swept in the first round by whoever. And then you're left with the same thing. It's like, well, we'll just go do it again in the fall. Like, we can't keep doing that.
First off, my Leafs team has a pecking order. So, firstly, nobody's making over Austin Matthews. That's 13.25 per season. On top of that, I still have serious question if I like Mitch Marner more than Willie Nylander. Right now, I don't. I think Nylander is a better all-around player. I think he's just better in general. I have more trust in Nylander. I think I echo a lot of what you're saying when it comes to the question. I know people are going to spark up with it. You know what you're going to get from Marner. He's going to be great in the regular season. I guess like the response to your initial question was maybe the price goes up over the next couple months. But I don't know about you. Like there's probably a dollar amount where I'm not going over to begin with anyway. So I don't care how much he wants, right?
Exactly. Like you
Yeah.
said, he's not going to make more than Austin Matthews. That's just that. Why the hell would you get more than Austin Matthews? Is the answer to that? No. End of discussion. You can walk if you're going to hold out for more than Austin. You're not better than Austin. You're not more valuable than Austin. The end of discussion. And it's also like, yes, he's a two-way player, and yes, he can kill penalties, and yes, like all those things are great, but you need to have that clutch factor. You need to show and prove what this organization needs. You haven't done enough to earn that status, and waiting is only going to benefit the Maple Leafs.
Mhm.
Like you said, oh, his stock's gonna, what, he's going to get 104 points, and his stock's already higher. It was already at that level this summertime, right? It'll depend on what he does in the playoffs. That's the only thing that matters, and you have to wait and see what happens, in my mind, because he's done this before, and no one's knocked him about not being able to put up points and not having good regular seasons. They've knocked him for going into a shell and becoming abysmal in the playoffs, and not just the playoffs, but the Leafs can get to that point where they have elimination games, or they get to the game 7 with Boston, or they do these things and he's bagels across the board. If you're going to pay that guy and give him that tag, he has to have that clutch factor. He has to be able to get this group over the hump. And it's just so tough. It's such a handcuff, because,
Yeah.
well, you know, walk for nothing. If that doesn't happen, that's devastating. Yeah, you open up the cap, but I think the Nashville Predators showed you can't just go shopping and build a Stanley Cup winning team. It's a very, very tough one, and people are invested in it emotionally with Mitch being around here for a long time and being, by all accounts, a good guy. It's a very tough one. Of course, just like we called, he's lighting it up in the regular season so far.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And if let me phrase it this way: if we get to the Stanley Cup playoffs and the Leafs go on this colossal run, and Mitch Marner's putting up like a point and a half a game, 2 points per game, really making a difference, got a couple OT winners, I would feel way more comfortable giving this guy the bag. That's what he's going to get, regardless of the number. It's going to be a shit ton of money, and people are throwing into the conversation. I guess the cap's going to go up to 97 mil. At least that's the prognostication. That's why I think he could end up being closer to Matthews than people think, because the cap's going up. It ends up being the percentage of the cap. But for me, it's more, as you said, about the playoffs. If he can prove it in the playoffs, I feel more comfortable paying the guy. But until then, I think it would be the most foolish thing I've ever seen in pro sports to run it back before you get a peek behind that curtain with a new head coach as to what this team looks like in the playoffs. And I would have the same conversation for John Tavares. I think you keep that cap space open. If you got to make those decisions where you're bringing both these guys back, then so be it. But I want to see something first. So plain and simple, Rosie.
I know it is tough. I mean, with the cap going up, John's going to take what, a $6 million haircut that you're going to open up, and then you give, a boost to Mitch Marner if you do sign him. You still got some room to work with there. But again, you've gone out and you've got the Rileys and you've got the Domies and you went and got the Bertuzzis. The bottom line is those little pieces haven't affected enough change. It's those big boys, and are the playoffs are the only thing that matters. So I don't know if you can. Is there any way to go through the playoffs and then still deal their contracts or their rights or
No.
get a deal done that
Yeah, they can.
it's one or the
They
other?
can. They can trade their rights, but they're not going to get anything. Like,
It's
you're not
brutal.
going to
It's
get
just
like a
so
first
brutal because you
plus.
want to wait, and the players have put the Leafs in this position. Like, you're that good, but you've failed this bad when we matter. So, like, how much stock do you put into what? Are you signing him based on his regular season performance and what he does on 82 games, which is very impressive, yes, or are you signing him based on what he does in the playoffs, which, especially for the Maple Leafs, is the only thing that matters these days? No one's talking about their great seasons or their finishing here or there, how many 116 points to this or that. No one's talking about that because no one cares. The only thing that matters is that playoffs. And I don't want to sign Mitch Marner until I know if he can do anything different in the playoffs. And so far, I'm leaning towards, that worries me because of what he's shown us in the playoffs. And it's just not good enough. Like, how could people argue that? They'll pull up these stats from the playoffs and this, that, or regular season. Okay, fine, but like, why haven't they gotten over the hump if he's so good and they have this team? And I don't know. And again, people always point at the defense and the goaltenders. Well, the defense and goaltenders have been fine in the playoffs. It's just been a complete lack of scoring and perimeter hockey and pulling up. And maybe Craig Berube can get this group playing in a certain style of hockey where it comes to playoff time. And Mitch Marner does play like he's been playing in the regular season now, and he does put up those points. And he does chip at guy and blow the guy's doors off and drive to the net and make this play, or play playoff hockey, which he just hasn't done. So it's so up in the air. Nobody knows. I don't know what the answer is, dude. I don't know what the answer. I get why people say, "Are you insane to let this guy walk?" I get why they say that. I don't really want to let him walk. It's just we can't make a decision until we see what happens, and you can't see what happens until it's too late to make a decision.
The chat's more in majority of waiting till after this season, but there's a couple guys. I don't know if they're trying to troll Mr. Relaxations in that conversation, where I think they're beaking me for having the same take as you, but there's nothing wrong. Like, we're echoing the same sentiments. And I think the majority of Leafs Nation feels that way. Dude, I'll drive that dude to the airport. I'll tell you right now, I'll drive him to the airport. If it means going to free agency and opening up cap space and doing something else with that money, then so be it. I think it's a definition of insanity if you're going to be like, you know what? You haven't done anything in the playoffs. We're still going to pay you because we don't want to lose you. I think that's so idiotic. So
They've,
idiotic.
they've already done it. They've already
Yeah.
done it, and it hasn't
But dude,
worked.
let me ask you this. You have more trust in Austin Matthews and Nylander over a Marner in the playoffs?
So far from what I've seen in the
Yeah.
playoffs, yes. I think that Austin speaks for himself, and Willie has got that clutch gene and that little fur your brow, go shove it up everyone's ass with the big moment and the big goal in the big moment. And
Yep.
Mitch hasn't proven that he's like that. He's had many, many, many opportunities to do so. If you're that good and you're a big franchise tag player that gets the bag, everyone that's gotten that bag has done something in the playoffs, has done something to get them to the next round, has scored the overtime winner, has gotten the G-dub to get them to the next round, has tied the game up late to salvage game 4. Like, he just doesn't do any of that. He's like a ghost in the playoffs. He goes to the perimeter and stick handle, cuts back, and then does a little drop pass and fucking starts back checking. It's like, we don't want that anymore. We don't want that anymore. We can't keep committing to this. I know these guys are good players and you're married to them mentally, but if it's not working, you can't keep running it back. We were talking about running it back like 2-3 years ago. Keep doing it, man. It's like sometimes the ingredients in the bowl don't work well together. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the individual ingredients, but and now they're handcuffed to timing. So a very polarizing conversation that's only going to get stronger as we get closer and closer to trade deadline. I just think it'll be impossible if the team's doing anything what it is right now and he's playing anything what he is right now. It'll be impossible to justify trading him at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna have that conversation on the show. They're not trading Mitch Marner.
No.
But it's either you sign him, re-sign him, or you let him walk. It's that simple. Again, but all this, my stance probably changes if Mitch Marner comes out and has an unbelievable Stanley Cup playoffs.
100%.
So
100%. I think you got to see that. You have to see that. I think you have to see that. You have to risk it that much, and you have to see it. And if he walks, you look at the cap space and you look at the group of free agents that are coming down the barrel here in 2025 on July 1st. That's going to be your reason to risk it, is because, hey, if it blows up in the face, it doesn't work, we'll get a shot at this. And that's not the worst thing in the world by any stretch, but you don't get to have your cake and eat it too here. And if he goes and they get to the Eastern Conference Finals and he's playing like he is right now, then you give him the bag and away we go. And Craig Bruba's got these guys thinking a little differently in the postseason, and we have a chance to do something. Okay, makes sense. Let's go. But I don't see any benefit to doing it beforehand, because everyone's going to bitch and yell at us right now for having this take of even being on the fence of a Mitch Marner when he's playing like this. But if they go into the playoffs and the exact same thing happens that always happens, everyone's going to be pretty damn quiet when he's sitting there with $13 million, shit the bed in the playoffs again. And now we're married to running it back again. And we have the same goddamn conversation that we've had for years and years and years. All those people are going to be pretty silent, aren't they? And that's only been the pattern that we can rely on. That's what happens every year. Why aren't I valid to have that concern? They've proven it time and time again. I'm not making things out of thin air. This is what they do. This is what he does. So why am I not valid to be concerned about it?
No, you got every reason. We're running a bit late here. We got to get to our interview, but the following interview, pardon me?
I don't care.
You want to keep going on it then?
No, I'm done, but
we still got 15 minutes to go. Yeah, no, we just got to play this interview. I don't know. I think at this point we've exercised this conversation to the ground, where it's like we know where people sit. Some people are very pro, some people are very con, some people in the middle. We've let it be known how we feel. The chat's let it be known. So we let it just break down the way it does over the next couple months and see the way it goes. But I wouldn't rush to this decision. That's all we're saying here on this front. Meantime, the following interview is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers. Get custom ring building delivered in less than 4 weeks with the Charm Masterpiece program and an unbeatable pricing policy. Charm Diamond Centers is proudly Canadian-owned and operated since 1972 with more than 85 locations across the country through Charm and their sister brands. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. As mentioned, we had a chance to spend some time with pro poker legend Daniel Negreanu on Monday. He now calls Vegas home, but obviously from the Toronto area, big-time Leafs fan. Here is Daniel Negreanu. Daniel Negreanu, pro poker legend. Daniel, you just launched a new podcast with your wife. Tell us about that, man.
Yeah, the Mania podcast. My wife and I have been talking about it for quite a while. My wife is bipolar, so I mean, I imagine like whether you have mental illness, or I'm sure like it plays a role in your life, and she's pretty open and vulnerable about what that's like. You know, we talk about the dynamic of me having to be the rock, and we just sort of shoot the shit for a couple hours and, have fun with it every week. And we're releasing them every Tuesday.
Right on. Is there anything specific you guys talk about, or is it just a freewheel open forum?
Well, the main crux of it is just, her bipolar diagnosis and how we deal with that and other people. But again, it does go into, it goes where it goes. It's a conversation between, a husband and a wife who, we communicate pretty well. We have a good chemistry. So yeah, we cover a wide variety of subjects, but that's the main issue. The main thing we focus on is her bipolar.
What are the chances hockey comes up in the conversation in one of the episodes?
I believe in episode 1, we did talk about Robin Lehner, right?
Okay.
Because
Yes, you
Robin
did.
Lehner
Yeah.
is also somebody who is bipolar. We had a clip out about him. And, he actually said something quite interesting. 2 things, really. One was, he said if he could give advice, he would tell people not to share their diagnosis because he feels like it hurt him with contract negotiations. He was only getting 1-year deals because I think people were a little like nervous about what this meant. But the thing that he said that really stuck out to me was at an awards ceremony, just because I have mental illness doesn't mean that I'm mentally weak, right? And I think when I hear that, I think of my wife, who, she's the strongest, strongest mentally of any person that I know.
Very true. Very true. Switching to hockey, these Toronto Maple Leafs 11-6-2 start. What's your take on this first? I think we darn near approaching the quarter mark of the season here. What's your take so far?
Well, let me say this. I don't want to toot this too early because you never know, but what they look like is a team that's playing playoff hockey for once. You look at their numbers and they're, among the best defensive teams in the league. And, I look at the pairing of Tanev and McCabe, which sort of came out in about mid-October, and they're just the shutdown pair of shutdown pairs. They're facing top competition every night. And, they're not only holding their own, they're shutting them down pretty good. And I think that's something maybe the Leafs, if you look at the last 5-6 years or so, you got the offense, sure, in the regular season, we can score 6 or 7. Then what about the playoffs, right? But being able to play like a defensive structure, I think the coach is doing a good job of setting them up for success down the road.
Well, that's exactly where I was going to lead to, is Craig Berube just feels like a natural fit. Now there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. We've seen it throughout this season, but you're so right. I just think the brand and the style is more conducive to success and having success in the Stanley Cup playoffs, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as flashy. Obviously, Matthews is out right now, but even when he's been playing, he's been more defensive minded, being more cognizant of that and understanding Ovechkin said it a couple of years ago, I think. He's like, they have to decide when they're ready to win, right? Because again, they've always been a team on paper that you look at in the regular season, you're like, woo, high flying stuff. And then, the playoffs is a very different animal. And so, and I wonder how much longer you can keep this nucleus together. How many more years do they have before they sort of have to start thinking about retooling? And, this to me, and again, it's early and I hate to jump the gun because so much can happen. But if they're playing like this going into the stretch and in the playoffs, considering Boston's weaker, I think Tampa's weaker, Florida by then is going to have played so much hockey. Okay. They won the cup. They made the finals. These guys are going to be beat down by then, I think. So the Leafs have a really good path. I think this year has to be the one where, they do the damage.
Well, speaking of that nucleus, Mitch Marner and John Tavares specifically have been coming out red hot starts for both of them. What's your take on those two guys? Obviously, contract years for them. Would you like to see something done with them contract-wise, or would you rather wait till after the season in particular and see how things shake out?
Well, I think right now, if you heard Elliot Friedman mention that the cap may be going up. If the cap goes up, this gives them a lot more leeway to keep this nucleus together. But then you got to ask yourself the question, is this the right nucleus, right? You look at some rebuilds like in Buffalo or Ottawa, and some of them have been slowed, and Buffalo rebuilt and then they rebuilt again during the rebuild, So the question is, are these guys, the right group to lead you to a Stanley Cup? And if not, can Craig Berube sort of turn them into one? And it feels like so far, they're buying into what he's selling in terms of system, and they have a decor that, and a goalie. Where he come from all of a sudden, that's been an issue too for them. So, putting all the parts together, I could see them, I don't know about Tavares in terms of what number he's going to get, right? You imagine he's going to take a big hit there, but, I think he'll do just fine in terms of his finances.
The big one for me is Marner, because he's so polarizing for many reasons. We know what this guy brings in the regular season. We joked about this in July, and it's playing out. He's having a storybook season. He might eclipse 100 points for the first time in his career. But for me, there's always that thing in the back of my head, what is he going to look like come playoff time? That's why I kicked this can down the road, Daniel. I really would on Marner at least.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of, I'm, doing the fantasy drafts going into the year. Marner was a high valued target, because this is a contract year. And hey, what do you know? Hockey players seem to play a little harder, you know what I mean, in contract year. But you're right. I think for a lot of fans, their frustration with him is, in the playoffs, and is he the kind of guy in your nucleus that, can show up when it matters most? And, I think this is going to be I think with him, if I were management, I would wait to see what the playoffs look like rather than gauge him on regular season. Because let's be honest, the regular season for the Leafs doesn't mean a whole lot. They're gonna make the playoffs. It's just a question of where you stand in there. And as we've seen in the last 5-6 years, it doesn't really matter. Get in, get to the dance. If you're Tampa, whoever, you got a shot. And so for the Leafs, I think really being focused on playoffs, even now, is the way to go and setting yourself up for success.
Mm-hmm. As far as some of the new acquisitions on this roster, there's some new bodies out there, and some of them are certainly making some noise and doing their part. Who's been your favorite so far as new players on the Maple Leafs?
Well, OEL's always been an interesting one, right? Because he looks like sort of, offensive. Like he adds to the team in a lot of different ways. And I think like maybe he struggled for a little bit, but now that they sort of figured out the defensive pairs and maybe give him a little more sheltered minutes, I think he's been a good addition there. I think too, looking at sort of, the depth of the team is an opportunity right now with Matthews out. I think it's a good opportunity to see what you got right internally. It's very difficult when you make the playoffs every year and you're a high, you have a high point total. It's hard to get those top draft picks. So a Bobby McCann or, a Nick Robertson has to step up, not necessarily high pedigree guys, but in order to win a cup, I think like, especially with a cap, you need those guys to really outperform their contracts.
So important. And obviously the big topic in these parts right now is the Ryan Reeves, suspension. Were you buddies with him when he was on Vegas? What would you make of the suspension?
I'll be honest with you. When Ryan Reeves played here, he's a tough physical guy, but this isn't a guy. He's not a headhunter. Okay. He's actually a very clean player. If you think about it, I remember he got a penalty out here one time where he absolutely demolished a guy. The guy, it's so loud in the arena. The refs looked at each other and go, I don't know, that must have been a penalty, right? They blew a whistle. They called a penalty. It was a totally clean hit. Now, this wasn't a clean hit, right? But his intention was clear. He had no intention of actually going for the head. He just missed. He elevated at the wrong time. I think he gets the 5 games, which is probably fine. And a lot of it has to do with reputation. But I don't think, if you ask around, like his reputation isn't a dirty player. He's not. He doesn't go after, the 5'9" Patrick Kane speedsters. He goes after the other big guys in the team who do damage, and he's fair, And I get the 5 games because, the hit is dangerous. But I don't think, if you look at intention, anyone being honest with themselves can say, yep, he meant to hurt him. No way.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think he plays hard and he plays fair. But as far as yourself, no stranger to betting and getting involved in that side of things, do you bet on hockey and do you bet on the Maple Leafs? And if so, what kind of angles do you look at when you're doing so?
I used to bet a lot, but I'll tell you what, if you want to be successful at betting, you have to take it like a full-time job, right? Just sort of looking at the slate and going, I like them tonight. Now you have to look really deep into the numbers. And obviously I live in Las Vegas, so I have access to, some guys with quant and, some, what they call it steam, right? The steam players, all the bookies try to keep them away because they win. And
Mm-hmm.
hockey's certainly a beatable game. But again, if you want to really actually win, you have to really, take it like a full-time job. So I haven't done that in quite a few years, but during the playoffs, I usually do. During the playoffs, I throw out my series bets and I crush those. Well, let's be real. I've actually done really, really well in series bets in the playoffs because I think like hockey is a high variance game. So generally speaking, as a strategy, because any team can win, taking juice back is usually, the preferred play because favorites are typically slightly overpriced, to say the least. So when you can find value on underdogs, that was always sort of my go-to in terms of my strategy. But in a 7-game series, well, now, variance is a little less impactful. It still plays a role, but, the better team is usually going to win over 7 games, a lot more so than over 1.
I kid you not, like 3 years in a row, I bet on the Leafs series in the first round. It goes 7 games and I kept hitting and there was incredible value. But like the reason why we asked that question is because from the Leafs perspective, there's just so much money coming in on this team on a nightly basis. They're always the favorite. Like it doesn't matter who they play, Daniel.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, and that's bookies just sort of trying to balance in their budget. So for a lot of people that don't know how that works is if you're a bookie, all you want is equal action on both sides, right? So what you actually think the line should be is less relevant than where the money's coming from, because if it's an even split on both sides, you just make money at no risk. So no question, Toronto's like the center of the hockey world, right? So a lot of people put a lot of money on there. So there's inflated prices, which means, frankly, if you're a Sharpie, you probably want to be taking the other side more often than not.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I noticed that for sure. It's just got to be volume on. I equate it to like Tiger Woods. You're trying to bet on him. He doesn't have, a chance in hell in some tournaments, and he's right in the top couple of favorites to win strictly on volume. And for that reason, it's tough. Is there a way to get around that? If I don't like to bet against the Toronto Maple Leafs, I like to cheer for them. And I always just find that there's no value in betting on them. Is there some ways around that, or is it just what it is?
Maybe the only bet you can make then is like their goal total or betting some overs and stuff like that, some over-unders. But yeah, again, I mean, that's the thing. If you're doing it for entertainment purposes and you want to have a little extra, cheese on the game, betting on the home team hard is fine. But like, again, as financial advice, it's typically not going to give you the biggest yield, I wouldn't say.
So you're unique in the fact that you're a Leafs fan and a Golden Knights fan. I'm looking forward to Wednesday and Ilya Samsonov, that video tribute. I don't know if he's going to play in that game, but how bittersweet was it for you to see Samsonov sign in Vegas after everything surrounding him the last couple of years in Toronto?
Yeah, there's sort of been a little bit of a link the last few years with Toronto and Vegas, obviously with Ryan Reeves going there, who was beloved here in Las Vegas more than anywhere else. And then, you had Max Pacioretty go there. And this is guys move around, right? But in terms of the goalie situation, we had another one of our own homecomings. We had Logan Thompson come back, yesterday to a big tribute and stuff like that. And it's part of the league. Guys move around. But I don't know if I would call it bittersweet necessarily. I don't know that Samsonov, he's not our main guy. He's the 1A, if you will, behind Aiden Hill. And but he's been good. He's been good.
Speaking of goaltenders, we've got two goaltenders with a lot of fanfare going on. Stoley's been hot out of the gates, obviously, with an injury to Joseph Woll. But long term, who's your pick to be the guy that they go to in the playoffs this year?
That's always injury related, I think.
Yeah.
It just depends. Like, because when you think of the goalie position, right? Like, these guys lose like 5 to 10 pounds after a game, during a game. They sweat so much going on. And I think because of the necessity to be so flexible and to be limber, like how you're feeling going in is going to be the number one predictor. If I had to guess, I'm going to say Stoley because, he's been great and there's no reason to doubt whether or not, he can do the job. He's been doing the job in the system. He's got a good, like a good defensive core in front of him that I think, can I think it makes the goalie's job a lot easier when you have that structure. And, we talk about that in Las Vegas a lot, in terms of our D, because our D is good. Like you have Pietrangelo, you have Theodore, you have Hannafin, you have McCabe, you've got shutdown guys. So if you're a goalie there, where they're going to be, they're going to take the rebounds and things like that. And that, that can have a big say in terms of what goalie numbers look like.
Before we let you go, we need a Phil Kessel update. You've been playing much poker. I know he's your buddy.
Well, it's funny because he hasn't retired, right?
I know.
He's like, he was still looking to play. He could have played last year, late in the season. I think he was looking to play this year. He's not a big fanfare guy, but at this point, it doesn't look like anybody's going to bite. He didn't play the entire season last year. So yeah, he's just, he's a poker player now. He's, he likes to play pot limit Omaha. That's his game. But he calls himself a fish, and that's a accurate description. A fish is, that's not a good thing in poker. You don't want to be the fish. He's a little bit of a fish.
I saw isn't he hosting his own poker tournament soon?
Yeah, he's getting more involved, in the poker space at this point. I think like I said, he just I was disappointed that he didn't play last year. Like, I thought he could have played with the Vancouver Canucks, and that could have happened, but it just didn't pan out. Because I think he has more. I think he had more to give. Like when he was pulled, like he's the Iron Man. He's currently the Iron Man. And if he jumps back in, he's still the Iron Man. But I felt like he played. What was it, 4 games when we won our cup, and played really well in those 4 games. And then the team was as healthy as it's ever been, and all of a sudden he found himself in the press box. I was shocked. He was shocked, and he never got. He never saw the ice again. I feel like that sort of weakened his market value.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell is going on. I look at San Jose specifically. I look at Chicago. Connor Bedard goes to bed at night praying for a winger. They just can't figure out a solution. Why not just stick Kessel with him? You're not winning the cup this year in Chicago, but we'll leave it at that. Daniel, always great catching up. Thank you so much for your time today.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Daniel.
Only Daniel Negreanu, pro poker legend, big-time Leafs fan, also a big Vegas Golden Knights fan, and I love how he dodged my question on Ilya Samsonov. I don't think Sammy's going to play on Wednesday. I'm looking forward to that video tribute, but he played on Sunday, which I think means Aiden Hill is going to play this one for Vegas.
I don't think he dodged it. I just think he said, I don't really give
He
a shit
dodged
about
it.
Sammy.
Yeah.
I don't care. He's not even our starter. Wasn't in love with him in Toronto. I think he was just like, meh.
Didn't take my bait. I wanted to be like, yeah, I was pissed off about that, but we didn't get that. But thank you to Daniel Negreanu for dropping by, man. He's a lot of fun. Knows his shit, eh?
Yeah, he's good. Easy to talk to. Easy interview. No, exactly. He's on the page. Not like some guys that are scrambling to kind of think about what's going on with the Leafs just because they're trying to promote their stuff. He actually watches it quite religiously, it seems like.
It's time for the last call, brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet a huge range of markets, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION, all in uppercase today. You got a bet in mind, don't you?
I do. So there has been a pattern of teams responding very well after getting shut out. And the Edmonton Oilers just got shut out. They're in Ottawa tonight. By all accounts, supposed to win the Stanley Cup. They are the better team, and they're even money on that game. So I'm hammering the Edmonton Oilers. I think they need to respond to the last couple games that they've lost. A real ugly 1-2 in Montreal, and I think the response is going to be there tonight. And Vegas doesn't really see it that way, so jump on it.
Hammer time. I stay away from all things Ottawa Senators. They're such a difficult team to bet on. When you bet against them, they win, and when you bet on them, they lose. So
That's the
I'm
Leafs.
staying away from that game. I like where your head's at, though. Edmonton needs that one badly, especially after very disappointing effort on Prime Monday Night Hockey. They're blanked by the Montreal Canadiens. I'm going to look to that Florida-Winnipeg game. Maybe it's a preview of the Stanley Cup Final, two of the hottest teams in the league. I'm going to double down and go with the Panthers, who just rinsed Winnipeg over the weekend in the front end of the home-to-home. This one is back in Winnipeg. I just think Florida is definitively the better team, and I think they win this game tonight against the Winnipeg Jets again.
Ooh, I like that. They're the underdog too, aren't they?
Yeah. Plus money you're going to get on the Florida Panthers. So, Rosie, we'll leave it at that. I believe you are off tomorrow, back on Thursday, right?
Yes, sir. I will be there live on location somewhere. I haven't decided yet, but
Okay.
doing some business, so we'll see where I'm at. I'll be floating out in the ether somewhere.
And we'll have a full recap on Thursday of this Leafs and Golden Knights game coming up on Wednesday. Coming up tomorrow, Carter Hutton's going to be in the saddle for the first time this season. On Monday, we had a chance to catch up with Brampton Steelheads netminder Jack Ivankovic, who is expected to maybe be the first goalie off the board in June's entry draft. This kid can play the puck like crazy. Highly touted prospect. We had a chance to spend some time with Jack, so you're going to hear and listen to that interview coming up tomorrow. Also, we're going to preview this Leafs Golden Knights game, so looking forward to that. Thank you to everybody in the chat. You're still going wild over this Marner conversation, which is great. It's healthy. It's good. It's therapeutic. I love it, Rosie.
You got to get it out, throw it around, mix some things up, see what people are thinking. And there's no hotter topic in Leafs land than Mitch Marner saga.
Could be like a Sunday. People will still be down for that conversation. At the Leafs Nation 401, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Again, many thanks to Daniel Negreanu for dropping by the show. Don't forget, we're available in podcast form as well. Leafs Morning Take. Just search it. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review on your way out. And also don't forget, theleafsnation.com. Check it out. Thank you to producer Andy. For Jay Rosehill, I'm Nick Alberga. We'll talk on Wednesday. Take care. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long-form interviews. We got clips. We got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks.